Well, as you noted, it's a waiting game. The Israelis aren't waiting, nor the Iranians. The exchange of fire, Israeli airstrikes, and Iranian missiles continues. Arguably, however, the Iranian attacks do appear to be tapering off. According to in an interview he gave yesterday, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu attributed this to Israel's a shift by the Israeli military to targeting launch systems for those missiles. He argued that the launchers are actually more important than how many missiles the Iranians have in hand, because if you can't launch them, they're virtually useless. And he said yesterday that around half had been destroyed. That's an impressive pace, given that that mission appears to have lasted something like 2-3 days. So at that current rate, if it continues and succeeds by the Israeli account, presumably the Iranians may not have any launchers left by the end of the weekend. So the Israelis seem fairly upbeat despite extraordinary damage to the home front from these missile strikes so far, including one on a hospital in southern Israel. Low casualty count relatively because many of the patients were moved out in advance, but nonetheless quite jarring for Israelis to see that hospital hit.
Dan, what do we know about the timetable for President Trump to decide whether or not to strike Iran?
Well, as you wisely noted, the phrasing appeared to be very deliberate, as given by Press Secretary of the White House yesterday, within 2 weeks, not 2 weeks from now, within 2 weeks, which in theory could be 2 weeks from now. It could also be 2 minutes from now. So I think there's a degree of tactical operational haze here. It appears that the Americans, to a degree, assisted the Israelis in the initial ruse that allowed the Israelis to drop the Iranians' guard and launch this attack a week ago precisely. You'll note that right before that attack, President Trump was speaking up the prospect of a diplomatic solution, saying he wouldn't approve or wasn't looking to see Israeli military action. And then as soon as that was launched, he appeared to change his tune. Now, that could have been because of the relative success, as reported to him, of the Israeli action. It's very hard to know what to make of these statements. Formally, the Israelis say they would welcome American involvement, but they're willing and able to continue this themselves. The question is whether indeed the Israeli military has the firepower to handle a specific nuclear site, one buried deep underground in a mountain in an area called Fordo. Many speculate that for all its aptitude, for all its virtuosity operationally, the Israeli military is too lean, too small. It simply doesn't have the lift that the US Air Force would have to bring in very heavy bombs and finish that job.
So, Dan, that's kind of been the reporting here that, what is needed from the Americans is this, kind of buster, bomb that can really go deep underground and get to this facility. Is that all that's left for the Israelis vis-a-vis the Iranian nuclear capabilities?
Well, daily we hear of new nuclear sites that were hit. Some of them are primary sites, some of them are secondary sites to a nuclear program that may indeed, and the Iranians have always said this, have purely civilian components, although Israel and the international community have long been suspicious of the rate and the intensity of uranium enrichment. This is a program that can produce bombs, fuel for nuclear weapons, if enriched beyond a certain point. So it appears that the Israelis, absent an intervention by the Americans, are demolishing everything they can in that nuclear program while also addressing Iran's missile program.
Talk to us about how Israeli officials are warning that Iran is hijacking security cameras to spy on them.
Yes, it's a very interesting story by my colleague Marissa Newman. I recommend it. It would appear that the Israelis, who apparently had a foreshadowing of this with Hamas attacks from the Gaza Strip. Hamas is a Palestinian group allied to Iran. As we all know, these are ubiquitous, these security systems, many of them linked up through Bluetooth. You can see what your security camera sees on your phone sometimes if you're away from your home, and that is not a very secure system. So it appears the Israelis are now warning that the Iranians have hacked into these systems, which gives them a live view of certain key points in Israel, certainly Israeli cities that they have been targeting with their missiles, and gives them a real-time targeting set of information, something that might allow them to adjust their aim or know if they've been successful in hitting the targets. Obviously, as in any war, each side would want to conceal from the other such information. It would appear that the Iranians have used off-the-shelf, very cheap technology to achieve that kind of critical information.